Hey, welcome, Talent Warriors, to episode 14 of the Talent War podcast with your host, George Randle, myself. Today, we've got a short segment coming up for you about how to better assess your talent. I know everybody's trying to hire really, really fast, but you can't let quality go by the wayside. You're just kicking the can down the road for problems. So stand by as we tell you the best ways to assess your talent. Welcome, Talent Warriors, to episode 14 of the Talent War podcast. We're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do a couple short podcasts for our listeners. You know, we've been out there on LinkedIn posting some polls, trying to find out what the most pressing issues are. And we've got a number of them, and we thought we would just do them in short segments. And today, we're going to talk about how to better assess your talent. And, you know, in the business that we're in, executive search, management consulting, talking with a number of companies, we certainly understand that there are some companies experiencing the great resignation and having a hard time holding on to people, dealing with COVID, dealing with the new variant that's made the news as of this weekend. And we understand that hiring and keeping talent, there are a lot of sides to it. But today we're going to cover how to better assess your talent. And in our book, The Talent War, How Special Operations and Great Organizations Win on Talent, one of the things that we talk most about is the talent mindset, the true belief that your human capital is the one competitive advantage that you can hope to achieve and maintain over your competition. And part of that talent mindset is treating your human capital with the same discipline, rigor, and focus that you do your financial capital. But assessing talent really starts with that mindset. And for you hiring managers, for you talent acquisition professionals, HR professionals, all those people that we're so blessed to have you download it and listen to this podcast, it isn't about filling a role. It isn't about getting a butt in a seat. And look, I'll be the first person to tell you there have been plenty of times where I've been working on a large talent acquisition engagement. And we got brought to the table as usual, much later than I would have liked. And there was a rush to get people in to meet the contract deadlines. So your host, whose teams have hired over 80,000 people, been there, done that, been to that rodeo, gotten knocked off the horse, made every single mistake that you can make. And I understand the pressures that are there to get people in the seats quickly. But moving quickly doesn't mean that you should ever sacrifice quality. And I'll be the first person to tell you, when you sacrifice quality, you've solved a problem for today by getting a butt in a seat, but you've created a number of issues down the road for yourself. And so if you're one of those great people who has that talent mindset and truly understands that talent is everything and are passionate about it, it might surprise you that my first tip is going to be to the talent acquisition and hiring managers out there, because it all starts with that relationship. As I've said many times, with the post-pandemic, the pandemic, and the great resignation, it is the era of the CHRO. Your HR and your talent acquisition teams are the front line as you fight the war for talent. Like any essential component, they need to be fortified, trained, and supported. Talent War Group's talent acquisition and HR consulting development service helps your organization learn to attract and retain top talent and help you gain an advantage against your competitors. Our current job market, like I said, is the great resignation. And now the great attrition is what you're seeing, and many other names due to the record number of workers quitting their jobs. You know, 52% of the employees are currently looking for a new job. So let us help you get it right, know what the best talent looks like, attract the best talent, and help your company thrive. The Talent War Group brings a unique set of skills to help you take your business to the next level. You can get started by finding us at talentwargroup.com and let us help you develop your next generation of leaders. Talent acquisition professionals that understand the team dynamic, that understand the hiring manager, that understand the revenue, the service, product, any and all deliverables that hiring manager and the hiring manager's boss has. When you understand all of those things and you build a solid relationship with that team and truly, truly understand the team dynamic, you're way ahead of the game. Because frankly, and I did it before I started this podcast, I went on to Indeed and pulled up business analysts. The number of jobs that came up was astronomical. And then when I went into the first 10, they looked. I have no idea how those companies are attracting talent, which we're going to talk about in another episode, how to better attract talent. But let's assume that you've got a posting out there. That posting should have started with A, the talent mindset, and then number 2, the relationship between the hiring manager and the talent acquisition professional. Understanding and clearly defining what success looks like in those teams. And, I've coached my fair share of veterans as they transition. And 2 of the things that I teach them are, 1, there are objective requirements. Those objective requirements are really, for lack of a better term, a point of fact. You have a bachelor's degree. You won this award. You have this certification. You were ranked number 1 out of 50. You brought in 25% more revenue than expected. You reduced the time to delivery of your software by 3 months. Simple points of fact that you usually see as a bullet on a resume. And in about 95% of the companies that I've spoken with, maybe even a little higher, unfortunately, that's the end of the discussion when defining success for the role. They're only looking at objective requirements. But as I tell the veterans, part 2 of having a list of your objective requirements to sell yourself is understanding the subjective or the attributes that we talked about in the talent war. What are those attributes inside of you as a veteran that allowed you to accomplish many of the bullets, many of the achievements that you've listed as bullets on your resume? And so when I talk to recruiters throughout my career, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what years of experience, what programming languages, what business processes, what certifications, degrees. It just doesn't take much to figure that out. That's about a 2-minute conversation at best. But if you have a great relationship between the hiring manager and the recruiter understands the things that are keeping the hiring manager and the team up at night, what their stressors are for deliverables, be that customer service, sales, R&D, product management, product delivery, could be in finance and accounting, what deadlines, what reports, what systems are they trying to integrate? What systems are they trying to review? Understanding the dynamics of what that team is operating in, then you understand the objective requirements. But the most important piece is getting into the subjective, those attributes that actually are predictive of success. Most people that I've worked with don't take time to articulate those. They'll say, oh yeah, I want a team player. I want somebody who's collaborative. I want somebody who is a great time manager. The list of, gray matter attributes is endless. But going back to that relationship between the hiring manager and the recruiter, when you look across the team, who are the most successful? Who has gotten promoted? Who has exceeded the expectations in their role? And it doesn't have to be the same role. What have those people done that sets them apart? Because it's not the experience. Is it their drive? Is it their resiliency? Is it a person who, no matter what you give them, is a true problem solver, something we call effective intelligence, delivering solutions where no previous book solution existed? Do they need that kind of effective intelligence? Do they need relationship building skills? Do they need communication skills? Do they need curiosity? How high of resilient do they need to be? Is this an area where you're going to be told no 1,000 times? Is it where your product's going to fail 2 or 3 or 4 times and you've got to find solutions? And so resiliency counts. You have to sit down as a talent acquisition consultant and as a hiring manager and say, okay, I'm looking across the team. This is what success looks like. Now, eventually, for the absolute best teams, after you've done this a number of times, the hiring manager can simply say, they'll point to a person on their team and say, let's clone that person. And that kind of relationship, you know exactly what the success profile is. But the recruiter and the hiring manager should absolutely create a success profile. And once you know what those attributes are, then you can ask questions to determine to what degree they have that attribute. You can start looking and evaluating their answers, looking for hints, for signs of those many attributes. You know, if it really were as simple as going off objective requirements, you really wouldn't need to interview. You could simply look at the accomplishments on the resume, the objective requirements, 2 to 3, 4 to 5, 7 to 10, 15 plus years of experience, this many years with this kind of system, that kind of software, this kind of hardware, and you could just hire the person. But we all know we would never in a million years do that. But yet, companies do that time and time and time again. They don't put the work in on the front end, developing the relationship between the people who are responsible for sourcing, attracting, and bringing that talent in the door to be assessed and ultimately hired or, moved to something else, or they're not a fit, declined. There has to be a great relationship between the two entities. And if you don't have that, the rest of the tips I'm going to give you aren't going to matter. But if that recruiter knows that team inside and out and that leader knows the team inside and out, you should be able to come up with the success attributes. And by all means, pick up our book if you'd like to know the 9 attributes. You do have to figure out, and Mike and I wrote about this in our book, we're not completely discounting experience, but that's really table stakes. And it's not something they either have it or they don't have it, but you should make that range of objective requirements as big as possible to attract the biggest pool. It's more important than ever, frankly, that you attract the widest band and create the biggest pool of talent to select from. But once you're narrowing down that list to the top 10, top 5, 3 or 4 that you want to bring in, the skills and experience really become table stakes. And now it's about the attributes. But if you know what the success profile is and the attributes that define success in that team, in that environment, in that department, in that business unit, then those things will start to jump off the page of a resume to you. Now, once you have that success profile, now it's about building an interview panel. Number one mistake I've seen countless times is recruiters having to chase managers and members of a team, look through calendar after calendar after calendar, and figure out who's available to interview. No. Tip number 3, have a very defined panel of interviewers for your team that consists of A players. Mike and I talk about it all the time. A players select A players. They have the confident humility to see in others who are going to make their team better. Find those people, make them responsible for being the frontline interview team that's going to add to your group. Now, just because they're A players doesn't mean they know how to interview. So 110% make sure that the talent acquisition and HR business partners are training those people on how to interview, understanding the process end to end, understanding what they're responsible for, understanding what role they have, where they sit in the order of interviews, and what they are going to be evaluating or assessing. Additionally, on that team, always make sure you have one agnostic person. This episode is sponsored by Talent War Group, a management consulting and executive search firm. We help you attract, retain, and develop your top talent because we know that the most valuable asset within your organization is your talent. With services like leadership development, talent acquisition and HR consulting, executive search, executive coaching, and keynote speeches, we work with you to create talent solutions to your most pressing business problems. You can get started by finding us at talentwargroup.com and let us help you develop your next generation of leaders. Also, if you like what we're doing here at the podcast, please leave a review as it helps us support and continue this podcast. It helps us support people who are really dedicated to improving their business skills and excelling above all else. A number of companies that are now doing this, and I really, really applaud them. So if you're in a customer support, customer success team, or let's say sales. What's wrong with bringing somebody from the legal department that's an A player over to interview? Why don't you grab somebody from the finance team, the IT help desk? You could pick any department that you don't normally communicate or work with, except on an exception basis, and choose an A player to come interview your folks. What you're doing is removing the bias and providing some balance to the interview. And you're allowing somebody who sees the rest of the company to see if this person is additive to the company as a whole. So have your A players, make sure they're trained, and add somebody who doesn't have a stake in this hire evaluating. The confirmation bias, when you get so many people on a team, even with A players, once they like somebody, they tend to move that person forward and find reasons to say yes to them. And even the best of us do it. So having somebody off the team, outside of the team, in a completely different department, interviewing against the company values and the company success profiles, general ones, it gives you an outsider's view, a really independent voice to do two things. Number one, to assess a candidate, but number two, to calibrate the people on your interviewing team. Now, each person, by the way, let me give you fair warning. Please do not put 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people in the interview. It's never been a good idea, but I've seen so many hiring managers and leaders do it, and it is just an abject waste of everybody's time. It's not additive to the process. It doesn't help you get a better hire. It simply drags along your process. Pick 4 or 5 people for the whole thing, max, and trust them to make a decision that once you've trained them, once you've calibrated that team, and once you've assigned them roles, that they are going to assess talent the way you need it assessed. Make sure each one of them has a list of 9 to 10 attributes like the ones we mentioned in the book, and understand what those attributes look like and how to listen for them in the interview. Additionally, you need to provide each one of those A players a set list of questions that are designed to elicit a description of how that person thinks and how that attribute shows itself. Make sure they have questions around drive, resiliency, integrity, the one question nobody asks anymore. We just take it for granted, which is often disastrous. We want to ask questions about their effective intelligence, their curiosity, whatever those things are, but your people that are on your interview panel have to know those attributes. Additionally, you've got to assign the questions like I mentioned, and then pick 1 or 2 people to provide pressure or a little bit of stress in the interview. And the number one way to do that, frankly, is all of us, multiple times a week, or at least multiple times a month, we've all had a fire drill. Recreate that fire drill in a hypothetical question and see how this person would solve that problem or respond to that fire drill. Create a short, impactful, direct scenario with the ramifications that failure isn't an option. Create whatever pressure points you want, but really stress that this is a really, really big deal. Make them feel the pressure of the question, but have it be your fire drill so you could see or get some insight into what they would do in your environment. Now, if everybody has questions for the attributes, everybody has an independent role on the panel, and you have somebody agnostic. Let me remind you and caution, every candidate that goes through the interview, first of all, different questions per interviewer, but every new candidate that comes through needs to have the exact same questions and scenarios put forth to them. You want to be evaluating to the best of your ability, apples to apples, oranges to oranges. Make them answer the same questions. Make sure that you have a really, really good scorecard. That scorecard should have a block for technical abilities, for experience, and those are the top 2 lines. That's the table stakes. Some are going to be stronger than others in that regard. But then list out the success attributes, the success factors, and make sure that scorecard has room for each interviewer to score that on a 1 to 3, 1 to 5 scale, whatever you prefer. Anytime, my personal preference, anytime you get beyond 1 to 5 scale, now the differences aren't as clear. 1 to 3 is 3, they have it. 2, I'm seeing a little bit. 1, they don't have it. That tends to be the easiest. 5 might be, they have this attribute in spades. Hey, I think they have a lot of this attribute at 4. Number 3, yeah, they got enough. 2, not seeing enough of it. And 1, they don't have it. It's generally how we would make it pretty simple to do. Once you put candidates through that interview process with A players, with somebody agnostic, with each person having set questions, with each person having a scorecard, you have to make sure that people don't share their feedback with the other interviewers. Please don't start biasing the other members on your team. Then the recruiter should bring everybody together, collect that feedback by email, Zoom call, however you want to do it. We certainly don't get particular about how you gather your feedback. And then start stack ranking the candidates and start looking at everybody on the team, how they scored. And the hiring manager and the recruiter should sit down and go through that scorecard. This does not make the process slower. It just means you've prepared in advance with a talent mindset. You've got strong relationships, and from those relationships, you easily develop a success profile. You develop a panel of A players and you train them. You assign them very, very specific roles. You teach them how to use a scorecard. You give them the questions and you run candidates through the process. Do not ever make this ad hoc. No matter how much pressure you get, you can speed it up all you want, but don't make this an ad hoc process. Then you're never comparing like to like, apples to apples. One candidate's going to get one set of questions, another candidate's going to get something different, and it's all going to come down to likability. You can have a simple scorecard. Keep the interview panel the same across all candidates. Now, I know in this fast-moving environment where, one person's doing the work of two or three, I know there are going to be times when you're pulled out. But I want to remind you something that I learned from Patty McCord, the chief talent officer at Netflix, who said the only reason someone could miss a meeting was to conduct an interview, because talent was that important to Netflix. And it's kind of hard to argue with how Netflix turned out. So while I understand that you may be an A player, you may have A players in your panel, and they may get pulled away for something the client needs desperately, you need to set interviewing days or interviewing blocks of time and do everything in your power to make sure that they don't miss those. Because God forbid you drag somebody in, a B player or a C player, and throw them into the process. You've just corrupted the whole process. If you want to better assess your talent, have a talent mindset. Understand how important this is, because it builds for the rest of what I've given you today. Make sure you have great relationships. Now, if your talent acquisition team isn't reaching out to the hiring manager, reach out to the talent acquisition team. And if that's not an internal team, make sure you have a great relationship with the external agency that you're working with. You need to know them. You need to know how they think. And more importantly, they need to know about your team, how you evaluate what you're looking for and what success looks like. Define success for the role, for that team, for that department. Now, one thing I definitely want to stress, if you're hiring people managers, if you're hiring people leaders, and you don't do a success profile, you are really creating problems for your organization. When attrition and retention are two words we probably all hear too much of, make sure you're selecting the next generation of leaders if you're bringing them into your company and not promoting internally. Make sure that this process is locked down tight for the attributes, the leadership characteristics, the leadership attributes, and you know what success looks like, and you can describe it with your eyes closed easily and see it with your eyes closed in an interview. Understand what success for a leader looks like. Make sure you have the panel of A players, train them, practice, role play, assign them the questions, and make sure that they can look at talent the same way each candidate that comes through the process. Have a great scorecard, put some pressure on them. You can roll this really, really quick. And frankly, folks, ideally, you get one candidate in one day, one shot, put them through the process. Don't make this multiple days to the degree that you can. And I know candidates have schedules too, but to the degree that you can, make it one continuous process. Now, last thing that I'll leave you with, and this is a little bit outside of assessing talent. Top talent has choices in the market, more so now than ever. This is the most tilted market towards candidates I've seen in over 20 plus years. That experience that they go through, if it's disciplined, if it's rigorous, if it's tough, and it's uniform, that still creates a great experience for a candidate because they want to be challenged. They don't want to join companies where it's a walk in the park to get the interview. Trust me, they just don't. But make sure that the candidate experience, every single touch point from the sourcer, the recruiter, through everybody on that interview panel, that is a professional process and a great candidate experience. The simple way to do that is to ask yourself, how would I view my own company if I went through this process? It's as simple as that. Make it something you're willing to put your name on and that you'd want to go through. The quicker you can make this process, the quicker you can assess talent, the quicker you can move on to selling the candidates that you want to join your company. And we'll talk about that in a different episode. Just because we have COVID, just because talent can be scarce right now, is no reason to sacrifice on quality. Have a talent mindset, develop a great process, and repeat it and refine it, repeat it and refine it. Use the feedback loop once you've hired people. See how they're doing, line that up against the process that you've created to assess that talent and see how good you were and make adjustments along the way. Great recruiting is an art, great interviewing is an art, and it requires practice and keeping that skill sharp at all times. Now, one thing that we certainly didn't talk about, but I want to give a nod to, is that there may be some assessment tests in the process that you want to give. And personally, I'm a fan of putting those up front after a recruiter's made the initial screen and you've done your initial cut down to 5. Put a number of assessment tools in there, but make sure that those tools are actually predictive of the things that they say they measure. I'm not a fan of certain things that, this person would like to do this or these are their strengths. No, it needs to be a behavioral based test and it needs to have a great data set that it can compare against hundreds of thousands of other people who've taken the test. And that is one leg of the stool. Your process is the second part, and the third is the recruiter. But if you can put all of those things together, you're going to be so far ahead of the game in assessing talent compared to other people who just rush through it, who want to get a butt in a seat. But it's all about that process. It's all about planning. It's all about forethought. It's all about training. If you put the work into it, if you have a talent mindset and you believe that talent is the most important thing and the only competitive advantage that you can hope to achieve and maintain, you will put the discipline and rigor around a great, well-defined candidate hiring experience. I wish you guys the best of luck. I hope that this has been helpful. If you don't get it right and you don't take the time, you're creating problems down the road. And the better you assess your talent, the better chance you have at retaining those folks, being able to coach, mentor, and train those folks, and having those folks make an immediate impact to your bottom line. So with that, Talent Warriors, I wish you the best. Appreciate your struggles, hearing about them all the time. Understanding talent is scarce, but this too will pass. And those people that are killing it, those people are winning, are the people with the talent mindset. Have a great day. And thank you for listening to the Talent War podcast, where we discuss all things talent, focusing on a true talent mindset, which is a core belief that the only true competitive advantage you can hope to achieve and maintain is your talent. Join us for the next episode of the Talent War podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you heard, subscribe, please leave a review, and connect with Dr. Tom Lokar and myself on Talent War Group's LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram accounts, and send your comments and inquiries to media@Talent War Group. The Talent War podcast is brought to you by the Talent War Group, a management consulting and executive search firm. With services like talent acquisition, leadership development, seminars, and executive coaching, we will work with you to create talent solutions to your business problems. To get started, please visit us at www.talentwargroup.com. And thank you for listening to the Talent War podcast, where we discuss all things talent, focusing on a true talent mindset, which is a core belief that the only true competitive advantage you can hope to achieve and maintain is your talent. Join us for the next episode of the Talent War podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you heard, subscribe, please leave a review, and connect with Dr. Tom Lokar and myself on Talent War Group's LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram accounts, and send your comments and inquiries to media@Talent War Group. The Talent War podcast is brought to you by the Talent War Group, a management consulting and executive search firm. With services like talent acquisition, leadership development, seminars, and executive coaching, we will work with you to create talent solutions to your business problems. To get started, please visit us at www.talentwargroup.com.